let's talk about the curriculum by Michael Clay Thompson. A lot of times just referred to as Michael Clay Thompson, level 2. If you have not watched my video on level 1, then stop it right here. Go back to video 1 and then come back to this one. So now that everyone that's supposed to be here is here, let's take a look at the stack. I'm gonna jump right in. Not as many books as in the first video. I opted out of the student books, which saves you money and is not necessary unless you need it for language. And again, there is a second. This is actually part 2. They take this big book for the teacher is all in one, but in the for the student book, so that it's not so cumbersome, they divide it into 2. So we're actually, the kids have got the first one using it. So this is just the second one. So I'm gonna use that for my examples. So yeah, so less books, you don't have to buy the student one. And I didn't talk about this the other day, but this would be a lot if you were trying to do this for say 3 or 4 or 2 different kids, depending on where the ages are. Like if you were doing Grammar Town and this, it might not be as hard because Grammar Town is very basic, and then as they get older, they'll be doing a lot of it on their own. So really it depends on how old your kids are. For me, it has worked really well. I actually started this for Abram, and Abram was starting it while Anna was finishing the Well-Trained Mind. She was in level 4, and she just kept sitting in. Like when we were doing language, she sat down. When we were doing some of the different ones, she would just sit down for the stories. And so finally, when she finished level 4, we just included her in, and then she just jumped right into this level. So it works well for us because of their age gap and just kind of where it is. It's a little bit higher level curriculum, so it kind of falls right in the middle of where they are. So for us, it works perfect. I love it because we do so much together. It's kind of like a one-room schoolhouse, but we're able to do history and science together, and then basically all of this, and then they do separate maths. Trying to think of what else we do, but anyways, so I wanted to throw that out there, that's another thing that could be a negative side effect if you have lots of kids and you can't crunch them together. So for my younger 2, I've already been contemplating, can I kind of squish them together and start Jolie earlier and him later? So we'll see, but we still have several years before I have to worry about that. So now we will jump in, but I did want to give that disclaimer that it can be difficult, but if your child is an excellent reader, once they get into level 3 and 4, on up, I feel like they can totally do this with just your guidance. And it's a lot of reading, so you have to make sure that they're comprehending, but I think it would be fun. Okay, so for us, I love it because it's challenging, but we can do it together. So as we started last time, we had Grammar Town, and he uses the analogy of a town to talk about grammar. The last time he used an island to talk about grammar. And then the second book, which was Sentence Island, he uses characters, and we go in more depth with the grammar and in writing sentences. He does the same things here. Some of the characters that we saw will meet again in Paragraph Town. So he kind of does characters and a story. Here, this is a story, but you don't really have characters. And I'll show you what I mean. I'll show you it first. Remember the little teacher boxes here, and he highlights some things. It says, Grammar Town. Once upon a time, far away and yet not so far, there was a town called Grammar Town, with shady streets and good shops and nice places to walk. In Grammar Town, people talked and lived and did their work with everyone they knew. The people of Grammar Town communicated with words. Let's go visit Grammar Town. So it's like, come with me. Let's meet this place and see what it is. And so he uses the town, and as you're visiting the town, he really makes it on your level to where it's like everybody uses language every day. And so let's see how they use it in their town. And he goes back through, he has a little bit of memory work here, and then he goes back through and he does parts of the speech, phrases, clauses, and the 4 level of analysis, and he just does a very in-depth job. And when I first started it, I thought, oh, maybe we should have skipped a level because this is review. But he just kind of starts, I guess if someone skipped the first level, he wants to make sure that you're you're with him, you still are on the same page, and then he goes on. He also has lots of practice in this. And again, even though we did all 4 levels for the sentences, he jumps in and just does 1 level, and you gradually build there. He uses really great graphics again to just kind of explain what you're doing. He also has another really good one, but I can't find it. Okay, so what I wanted to show you now are the phrases. So he did an excellent job, I felt like, of talking about verbal phrases, and I did not remember like appositives and gerunds and participles and infinitives and all of those. I knew prepositional phrase. So he put this in the teacher's book, and I thought it was really good. It says, do not fall prey to the evil stereotypes about how difficult the phrases are. The verbal phrases are learnable. There are only 3 kinds, and each one can be defined in 1 sentence. Students learn harder things than this every day in math. And so it was funny because the day that we actually, right before we read this, Abram said something about, man, it's so hard, but I really enjoy it. And he was saying, like, I learn really hard things in math. I can't remember how he said it, but basically it was exactly this. And so then when we read it this day and I read that out loud, he was like, whoa, Mom, that's what I said. So anyways, it was a really good reminder that Abram loves math and he does really hard things. And so if he can do it there, he can do it in grammar. And so I really love that. And again, just a reminder that it is easy, it is doable. And so always act like that with your child. And as you guys going through it together, I think when you're like, okay, no, this is really hard, so let's see if we can do this, it's harder. So anyways, it was fun. And we refer back to that, just kind of that page to help us. I think that was all. There was one more. Oh, here it is. He also talks about sentence structure, and he talks about clauses and how each clause has a subject and a predicate, subject, predicate. And then he talks about independence and dependent clauses. So if you know what all those things are, then I think this speaks for itself. But for us, this was really helpful to kind of diagram with our kids. So I'm going to jump to this now. This is the practice like we did before. And if I were you, I just wouldn't buy this because as you saw, there's lots of practice in here. And you can scan the front. And again, I don't even use this, but you can scan that code in the front and it has a PowerPoint with more that you can practice. But in this Paragraph Town, you have one of these for every single lesson. So for us, I dictate, and for those of you that aren't familiar with that, with classical minded education, you start out and you do dictated sentences where you read the sentence aloud and then they write it down without looking at it. So we typically do a dictated sentence and then they know to do the 4-level analysis and then we discuss it. So this back portion, all of this, there's 1 lesson for each chapter. There's 10 chapters, so there's 10 lessons, and then there's 10 extended lessons that kind of go beyond. And each lesson is quite long. Like it gives the summary. I don't know if you can see it gives the summary, and then it gives the sentence that you break down, and then it has something that you typically discuss or like some questions that you can ask them. And then it typically, yeah, here we go. It'll have another like called a paragraph lab where they're actually writing a paragraph or writing 2 paragraphs or writing a short essay. We even looked at Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, which was really neat. We looked at that for a couple days and used it. They reprinted it here, but that was really neat. So anyways, again, tying in some history and using your paragraphs. I will say that this has been a little more challenging for Abram. For Anna, it's not as challenging because she's older, but this has been challenging. It hasn't been as enjoyable, but as I've looked back on the video from the other day and I've thought about this school year, because we jumped in late to Michael Clay Thompson, we have crammed like a 1.5 years worth of work into 1 year. And so I've kind of been pushing us, so maybe I'm pushing a little too much. But it's still been something, even though like Abram, when we read that, even though it's been difficult, it's still something that he would rather do. So that kind of makes me happy. This is another great grammar, and I love, or diagram. It's got your pronoun replaces a noun, your adjective modifies, and then your adverb modifies, and these three kind of just hang out and are part of the sentence. So again, visual, visual, visual. It really helps you to kind of just show you that it's not so complicated. Okay, this is the language. I wanted to go to the very end. This is the student book. I'm not going to show you the teacher's book. It's basically the same, only not as pretty because it's not in color, and it has all the quizzes in the back. This, though, is a list of the entire year, all of the stems. See all the stems at the top, and then all of the words at the bottom that they're going to learn. And so that is a lot of words, and it has been rather daunting, but we just keep plodding through. Lots of really good pictures. Weekly, it has some crossword puzzles and then open-ended questions that you discuss. It has, again, your sentence diagramming. Typically, because these sentences are harder to diagram, and this is only the second level, you're just doing the first 2 to 3. And actually, this one looks like you do 3. So this is the second part, the second half of the year. So they must, we haven't got here yet. So they must do the 3 levels. Right now in this, we're only doing the first 2 levels. So again, you're having practice upon practice. The stuff that you talk about in here is referred to in other places. It all just kind of meshes together. So you're practicing the same things. So again, if you watched the first video, but you did because you wouldn't be here, we did this one first, got rid of it, and then we're doing paragraph town and grammar at the same time. Or paragraph and language the same time, sorry. And then we've read our trilogy book. Okay, so all of that we can do simultaneously, and then when we're done, we'll do poetry at the end. So again, lots of it. It is constantly like the first one. This is very similar. Basically, this is exactly what you saw yesterday, only harder. He talks about who is the author. This one's Maya Angelou, and so he'll pull someone out and he goes a little bit in depth from them. He has little things that you practice writing. He talks about synonyms, antonyms. They do analogies. Again, with the Spanish, we compare our Spanish. And then here was where I told you the other day that we could scan our code. So you can scan the code and listen to the person read. And there's great maps. So really great history. And the last thing that I wanted to show you, I don't think I did this. I may have done this video a couple times because kids keep coming in, so I've forgotten what I've showed you. Okay, so with the, every year he recommends 3 books. So we did the Trilogy of Mud. Now this year it would be Peter Pan, Alice in Wonderland, and I think it's Wind in the Willows. We had already done those 2 books, so I just bought Peter Pan. And again, you don't have to buy these books. We just didn't own Peter Pan, and I do like that he brings out and highlights some of the things that you've been learning throughout the school year. So it's kind of nice to kind of, you know, to see that instead of just reading the story. And again, more sentence practice. And he does have vocabulary words at the bottom so that they, you know, you make sure that they understand. So yeah, so we haven't done this. We'll probably honestly do poetry and read this maybe over summer break. So yeah, we're actually squeezing a lot in. And so the poetry book we haven't done yet, so I don't really have anything to say about it. But we will treat this one. I heard someone else say that they kind of treat the poetry book as just a book to work at the very end to enjoy and read. It says that you'll learn patterns of sound, meter, stanza, figures of speech, end stopping, and poetry. Obviously, poetry. Oh, I'm slow. Poetry as in, I bet that it is just poetry that you read. But again, it's just really pretty and really cute. So we may do some of the lessons. Honestly, there's lessons and quizzes and tests and things at the very end. Last time the kids really liked it. They liked doing the activities and the challenges that he had for them, and the quizzes weren't bad. So we may not just, you know, we'll probably read it and then we'll probably do those two because they do and like it. They do like it. So yeah, we've been outside today, so I'm a little tired. I apologize, but there is Michael Clay Thompson, level 2. I do think that it's not too much for an entire year, but like I said, because we started halfway through a year, so that kind of has thrown us off. So we just kind of pick and choose what we want to do. I was talking to another friend and we were discussing, you know, if you want to just do the grammar and writing, you could do that. If you wanted to do just language, because this has Latin in it, you know, you may want to do the Latin and the vocabulary words. You could do that. If you want to just do poetry, just do poetry. So it really is just a mix and match. I just like to grab it all, try to do it, and then what we, you know, he'll review next year if there's something that we missed. So anyways, I'm curious to see what you all think, and if you have questions, let me know.